If you compare your preparations to a parachute, will you have a crash landing or will it be a smooth, beautiful ride? Hey, Provident Preppers, I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Kylene. And today we are going to talk about parachutes. Actually, not parachutes, but an analogy to parachutes and your emergency preparedness and how prepared you are to handle whatever happens in the future. Now, with this, I thought, oh, this is great. I need to use this for a prop. And so I went downstairs. This is a parachute, and not a real one. It's one I play with my kids and my grandkids with. But this is how I found it packed, right? It was all falling out. So who do you think packed this parachute?
It wasn't Grandma.
It was not me. Now, if you are depending on something for your life, for your safety, is it a good idea to have somebody else pack it, or to pack it yourself, or to know who packed it and make sure that they were able to pack it appropriately, right? That they were professionals. So in today's video, we have an expert that's going to talk to you about this.
Absolutely. Jim Phillips does just an amazing job of talking about the law of the parachute and how that parachute needs to be packed, and how it gets packed makes all the difference. Hey, Provident Preppers, we are so excited to be with you today, and we are so excited to have Jim Phillips with us again. Jim just has a wonderful way of teaching, and we are excited to hear from him today. Jim, thank you for joining us. And as you are aware, I've told you before, one of the first things when I heard you speak that really resonated with me is this law of the parachute. It's a visual example to me that really hits home. It really drives home the point. So let's start out. If you'd be willing to teach us the law of the parachute, and then we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Well, it's a simple concept, and where that came about was when you're trying to get across to people an image about being prepared, emergencies, stuff, things like that. Sometimes people talk about, well, 72-hour kit, or you got this evacuation bag. Well, you got this pack that you're going to jump out of your house or your car and, and run off someplace, and that's going to take care of you. That's a lot like a parachute. It's going to be on your back, and if you're going to jump out of a plane, and that's where this concept came, because here's the kind of the law of the parachute. You have to have it before you need it. You have to have it with you when you need it, and you have to know how to use it. You have to actually use it, and it darn well better be a good one. And if you can't answer yes to all of those, you're going to die, as it's simple as that. So if you take that back to your stuff, your things, your preparedness in areas, and by the way, the law of the parachute isn't about kits. It's just a way of getting the idea across. It's more about what your attitudes are, what your knowledge and understanding is, your supplies, your skills. That's what it's about, because you have to have those things in place before you need them. Once you're in the middle of this event, it's a little late to get out the book and say, now, how do I find this? Where is this? So you practice, you do things, and you gain an experience with it so that it's just kind of automatic what you do. Doesn't mean that you need to know, do, and have everything, but it isn't like you're going to be caught completely by surprise. So the image of the parachute is something that I came up with years ago when I started, to make the point that whatever the event is, whatever the disaster is, it doesn't care. It has no responsibility for your well-being. That is your responsibility. You have the right to do things. You have the responsibility to do things, and you'll be held accountable for what you do and don't do. So it's like, well, let's get ready. Let's be ready to deal with stuff.
That to me is just the best analogy that you can think of, because jumping out of a plane is a pretty serious issue. I haven't chosen to do that yet. I've chosen not to jump out of a plane because I think a perfectly good plane is a great place to be. But there's some people that do like to jump out of a plane. But this parachute thing, that we all may need that parachute. I think we all will need that parachute. We need it throughout our lives, and we need it specifically for certain situations. So teach us about packing that parachute. That's kind of the topic today, is who's packing our parachute, and what does that mean?
Well, using that parachute analogy, and thinking about people that do jump out of planes. Now, I've had friends that jump out of planes. I'm same with you. I'd rather fly a plane than jump out of a plane. So I've chosen to do that. But you think about it, had who packed their parachute? Now, some of these people learned to pack their own parachute. In other words, they were totally responsible for that parachute working, that they got everything just right. No lines were tangled, everything was folded just right in there. And then there's other people that have professional parachute packers put those packs together for them. And you have to think about, well, do I trust them? Do they know what they're doing? And so I use that idea of packing a parachute to be the same thing. Now, here again, it isn't about a kit. I don't want people to have a kit mentality. Yes, you should have some supplies, and yes, you want to have them maybe in a form you can take them with you. But again, it's about your knowledge, your skills, and then having material things also, and having that packed in your head, in your heart, in your basement, in your car, wherever it is, so that when the event comes, you're ready to respond with it. So when you think about who would you want to be packing a parachute? Well, first off, I'd want somebody packing a parachute that actually uses a parachute, that they understand the risk, that it's like, when they jump out of this plane, this thing better work. And if I've made a mistake, I could kill somebody. So one of the things when you go looking at preparedness equipment and kits and things like that, oh, I'm going to digress for 1 second. Back years ago, I wrote, and it's on I didn't write, I taught a class called Your 72-Hour Kit Could Kill You, because I want to get that idea across. If things aren't right and you have this bag of stuff and now you have to use it and it's a real keeper and it's not right, it gets you in trouble. It could kill you. It'll at least cause you to suffer and those kinds of things. So that was this whole idea of using the analogy of parachute and packing a parachute. So I want somebody that is a user, that is, I'll say, drawing this stuff together or is teaching about it. See, I think that the first responsibility that you have in finding who's going to help you with your parachute, your supplies, your ideas, your attitudes, and those things is somebody that is a user. They are actually doing it. They're not just reading a book and then talking about that. They actually use it. And I don't mean just kind of play with it. I mean, they use it for real. They go out and do what they're talking about. That's why when I was a scout and my father was scoutmaster, we took survival trips. We didn't talk about survival. We went off into the woods with nothing but just a pocket knife, flint and steel, a tin can, and that was it. And you go out there and spend a few days. And that's what I started doing with my scouts and my sons, taking them out because I want you to understand you're okay if your head and your heart is right and you have some skills. So you want people that actually do these things, not just talk about them. So that's one of the ways that you can tell. And so if I'm talking to a salesman on something, the question becomes like, well, okay, do you have one of these? No, I don't have one. Yeah, end of story. I'm done with him because he doesn't know what it's all about. And then the other thing about this, when we use this analogy of parachute or your supplies, it's critically important that you practice. You must go do this. In other words, if somebody says, well, I've got my 72-hour kit, I'm ready to evacuate, I'm going to digress again. I do not like the title 72-hour kit. That's why I don't use it. I use evacuation kit and things like that. But people talk about it and it's become kind of ubiquitous, so we'll just simply say that. How do you know it's going to last 72 hours? What are you going to do if it's 120 hours? So what you want to do is have something that will sustain you and not just help you just survive. Man, I've tried survival. It usually hurts a whole lot. I don't like pain. So what I want is something that's going to sustain me very well, very comfortably for as long as I need to be sustained out there, whether it's in the wilderness or at my home when I have no utilities and they aren't coming back, which is one of my themes right now, loss of utilities. What are you going to do? Because they're gone. So you have to be set up so that you can take care of yourself, your household, your family, and then be a resource to other people around you. So it's that's what it comes down to. This is actually common sense. There's really no magic in this if you think about it. See, I don't think somebody has the right to sell, talk about, or teach about something they haven't actually done. You don't teach from, well, you can teach from a theory, but you shouldn't, because you're going to miss some things. And that's why the definition of knowledge is, it's information multiplied by experience. You want to get good, credible information and then go get experience with it. Now you have knowledge. Now you have the right to talk about that with somebody, to teach them about it. So I try to live by those principles. That's kind of who I am, what I do, and what I share with people.
This really is something that we all need to work on. And what you're saying is this applies not only to things that we buy, but things that we learn and things that we do. So let's break that down a little bit. Talk just a little bit about things that we buy. You've alluded to that some, but how do we make sure that parachute is being packed properly?
Well, where you really have to start is you need to know what your true needs and priorities are for different situations. What is it that you need? And the reason I can't put together I'll just say a kit or a list for somebody else. I can do a general, which is what I do all the time. But what are your economics? What is your health? What are the special needs? What are all these things? And you have to take care of that because you know what it is. So you take a look as what are your true needs and priorities. And it's not about lifestyle, it's about life. It's about preserving life. Then it's about being, I'll say, comfortable, because I don't like suffering, particularly when we're talking about now, like in the winter and the cold and these kinds of things. That's why I focus a lot on thinking about no utilities in a home. What are you going to do? Well, your home will be chilly, it'll be cold, but it's way better than being outside. Now, how do you prepare yourself to deal with that? So know what your true needs and priorities are for where you are at the time. And then once you have that, then you have to understand, well, when you come up with true needs and priorities, then you can simply say, well, here's what I have to have. And we might say, well, I need food, I need water, I need shelter, I need these things. So you go down this list, and I break it down into what I call the 9 provident living modules. There's 9 areas. Obviously, it breaks down to finer than that, but there's these 9 areas. The first one on the list, and this is the first thing you have to pack in your parachute, pack in your head and your heart. The first one of these modules is what I call foundation. And what that's really about is what is in your head and your heart. It's how you think. It's your outlook. And it's about eliminating fear, because what you have to understand is that fear is the great stealer of freedom. People that are afraid are not free to act and take care of themselves. They're all bundled up inside of themselves. They're wondering, what do I do? And there's the key to understanding what fear is. You're afraid of things when you don't know what the answer is. So when you run into something that says, boy, that scares the heck out of me, it's like, okay, there's something I don't have an answer for. Once you get an answer, once you have an understanding, you know what to do about it, and you can take care of the issue. So number one, you've got to get inside of your head and inside of your heart an attitude that says, I can make it no matter what. I'm okay as long as I have breath. I'm okay. Now, I'm not there 100% yet, but I'm a little closer than I was when I was 15 or 16 or 40 or 60 or 70. I'm better off now than I was then, because it is a process. And this whole idea of becoming prepared to deal with things is a process. So number one, it's your head and your heart. What do you pack in there? How do you think? And there's a whole lesson in that. In fact, I do a whole class on that one, that we talk about your teachers. Who's teaching you? In other words, who's packing your parachute in your head? Who's teaching you? All right, number 2 is when you go down this list. Now, it's typical that people think about food because, well, we keep getting hungry, and we notice that, and hunger is a very powerful emotion. But food is not the next one on the list. The next one is on the list. You have to think in terms of what is going to hurt you or kill you the worst when things are really bad. Well, take a look right now. Here we are in February, and we've just had some storms come through. We've been below zero in my house. We're below freezing during the days, and sometimes well below freezing. If I was stuck out there, I mean, if I was just out in it, then what is it that gives me protection? Well, it's clothing. Clothing is personal portable shelter. And the reason that has to be clothing is number 2, when things are really bad, you can get injured, hurt, or dead really, really soon. It can take just a few hours, actually minutes in some cases. So the clothing is number 2 on the list. Then you think, well, isn't it food yet? No, not yet. Not yet. Because what's the other thing that'll get you really, really quick is water. fact, if you think about it, you see, if you lose your attitude within 3 seconds, you're on the way to dying. You just give up. It's all of them, unless somebody comes along and saves you. Then if it's going to be extreme weather, cold weather in particular, blizzards and blowing and what have you, it can be 3 or 4 minutes before you're injured. It's very, very quickly, or maybe it's just a few hours. So it comes on very quickly. Then what about water? Without adequate water, safe, clean, potable water, then you can be in trouble. Well, we'll say 3 days. I know of situations where people have died in less than 8 hours. The report says they had died within 8 hours. Now, that was an extreme situation. We can usually think in terms of 3 days. Well, you might make it 4, 5, or 6. But I'll tell you what, 5 and 6 will not be good days. They will be awful on your way to this suffering death. So next is water. So you take care of the water parachute, because each one of these is like a parachute. Now then, what comes next on the list? You say, well, certainly it's food. It's not. It's not food, because what you have to do is not get sick. So it's sanitation is number 4 on this list. You're taking care of sanitation, because if you have water and clothing and food and what have you, but you get sick because your environment is dirty and you don't know how to keep yourself clean and sanitary, you get sick. It might take you 2 weeks to die from cholera, but you're still dead, and the rest of your stuff didn't do you any good. So you have to think in terms of sanitation for yourself and your surroundings. Now, finally, we come to food. Well, I don't use food. I use nutrition, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that people are eating all the time that has nothing to do with nutrition, but we call it food. And those are a lot of the supplies that are put in these emergency kits, and you eat the snacky crackies and sugar and what have you, because it's comfort food. No, I need nutrition, not comfort. And by the way, if I'm well nourished, I'm very comfortable. So anyway, comes to nutrition. Then this thing is, well, there's a whole bunch of other things on this list. So you go like, well, I wonder what would be next on this list. Well, one of the things you have is shelter. Shelter is really, really important, because this is how you're going to take care of yourself when a lot of things are wrong. Then you have another one, which is wellness. Now, that's kind of a catch-all, because this whole thing is about wellness, but that's where the first aid and that's where the medications and all those things come in. But let me tell you another, I'll say, personal protection thing comes in, and that would simply be communications is really important. We are social creatures, and if you put people in solitary confinement and they don't have any way to listen to the world or learn what's going around them, that's really hard on them emotionally. And when you lose your emotions, when they get out of whack, that threatens your attitude and you can give up. So actually being able to listen to the world and get some information is really, really important. So this wellness area has a whole bunch of things in it. Also, communications, radio, that's a tool. So one of the other things we have is tools, and then supplies. Now, so many of these things were supplies, food, water, toilet paper, those are all supplies. Matches, those are supplies. Tools are pliers and needles and things like that you need so you can repair and fix things. So that's the list. It's your attitude, foundation, clothing, water, sanitation, nutrition, shelter, wellness, tools, and supplies.
And I like the fact that you have made abundantly clear that this is not a list. This is not something that you're going to give us or we're going to give our audience. This is something we have to sit down and figure out. And that is the critical task here, is to evaluate our risks and then make our own list of what we need.
That's right. That's where understanding your true needs and priorities in all of those 9 areas and breaking them down. Like I said, within tools, you have, your radio you have in there, that's a tool, but it's also a wellness item. And so you break this down and say, what would it take for me to take care of my household and my family in a given situation? But one of the things I hear people talking about is they ask, well, what are you preparing for? What is it you're getting ready for? Well, everything. Well, what does that mean? Let me define that, because this is actually a shift in how I'm approaching my classes. I've been teaching this stuff for a long time, professionally and as a hobby. I've been teaching it for a long time, and you go through this evolution of understanding. So let me give you what I believe the answer is if you want to be prepared and you want to cover all the bases. Here's the situation. 100% loss of power grid. Gone. Now, I don't mean the power is turned off for a few hours. It is gone. Permanent. Now, is that going to happen? Well, I mean, actually, I'm going to say yes, it will. But that's kind of a gloom and doomy thing. There'll be people who go, oh, can't even go there. But let's just think about it for just a moment. If I could take care of myself for 2 weeks with no power right now in the winter, I could extend that into 2 months. If just doing more of the same, getting a little deeper into it. And if it was going to be 2 months, well, how about all year? And you see, when you think about loss of power grid, that starts covering a lot of things because number one, the question you ask is, in fact, this is what my classes are becoming. What caused it to go away? That's going to tell you, is it long term or short term? If it's only going to be off for a few hours or a few days or a few weeks, well, you respond one way. There's certain events that could occur that are likely to occur that'll take it out permanently. Well, when I say permanently, the rest of your life, rest of your life, they could be taken out. Okay, are you ready to respond to that? That's pretty big. That's one of those ugly things. In fact, the class that I just put up on YouTube is called the worst event or the worst, let's say the worst, I forgot what the name of it is. I just put it up. Anyway, it's the worst event you face. It's the worst thing that you could face. And if you think about it, what is it? On a major scale that covers everybody. Well, loss of the power grid. That's the worst thing because everything else shuts down. Now you have to be prepared to take care of yourself. But here's when you analyze it, let's get off that one for a moment in case somebody says, oh my heck, I can't even go there. Let's just back up for a minute. When I lose all of my utilities, what's the climate I live in? You know, if I'm in Florida or if I'm in Minnesota, you're going to start responding a little differently because your summers and winters will be different. So is it summer? Is it winter? And once you understand why it went away, how long is it going to be? And so that's the way you do it. And then you can start breaking it down into these 9 areas and say, okay, how do I handle myself? Because now am I rural or am I in a big inner city? Those are different responses. So that's the list of the 6. What caused this event, whether it's loss of power grid or not, just whatever caused this event, so I know how long it's going to be. Then what's the climate? What are the conditions, winter, summer? Am I in the city or am I in the country? And if you can cover those 6 areas, you've got it. And then you just ask the question, how long is it going to be? So you make the description to say, well, this parachute I'm packing, it's going to be good for 72 hours, 3 days. Okay, it's not a very big parachute. That's fine. And then what am I going to do day 4, 5, or 6? Well, you have to have a backup plan because that's one of the other principles. You always have a backup plan. So you back up your backup that has a backup to the backup that you backed up your backup with. In other words, you have options. And that's where understanding your true needs and priorities and all the things you've been learning is now you start having options because if one of your things breaks, well, I can make a replacement over here because I've been practicing and playing with things. So that's why this is a game. This is not gloom and doom time. This is a game that says, and this is what I do all the time. I have in my mind when I'm looking around, I'm saying, what if? What if? Just right now, what if? Right now, if whatever the event is takes out the power grid, what would I do? Well, I'm going like, oh, there's some other things I would have liked to have done. Here's one of those attitude things that's very important. When whatever the event is happens, you're going to be exactly where you are. You won't be where you wish you were, where you're planning to be, where you hoped you'd be. You're going to be where you are. If you're traveling, that's where you are. If you're at home, that's where you are. If it's winter, that's what it is. So you get that out of your head that it has to be this perfect situation. It's just going to be what it is. Now, asking the questions, what if all the time? Well, what would I do about it? Is my parachute packed to deal with that? Ooh, there's some things I don't have or know. Well, make a choice. Either take care of it or say, it'll never happen. And that's what a lot of people do. It'll never happen. Okay, that's fine. But if it does, now what do you do? That's the difference between reacting and responding. One of the things I want to teach people is You want to learn, keyword is learn how to respond, properly respond. Otherwise, you're going to be reacting to what the heck do I do now? And the example of that is that we can look back on recently is back in last February, or not last February, 2 years ago, February, down in Texas, and not just Texas, but all across the South, but especially Texas, because they lost their power grid. Most people were without power for a period of time. Now, the good news was that was just kind of an emergency. It wasn't really at the disaster level because for most people, because it was just a few days and there was help coming. So that was an emergency, kind of serious. But during that emergency, because there were people that were not prepared, in other words, they hadn't learned how to respond to that event, there were some 700 people that died, and there were thousands of people that were hurt and injured, and lots of people suffered because they were stuck reacting to a situation that they had no clue could ever happen to them. So you want to prepare yourself, learn to properly respond to whatever may go on, and then do your best from there and have an attitude that says, no, I know some stuff, I'll do it. I need to know some more stuff, so I'll learn some more things, then I can do it. So it's kind of a philosophy
Right.
about this whole thing. It's a way of looking at it.
And I think you've alluded to this, and this is the truth of it is a step-by-step process. None of us gets there quickly, and none of us gets there without making some mistakes. But that's the process, is this step-by-step learning process. And
one of the beautiful things that happened in Texas was that it kind of woke up a lot of people. We created a whole video on lessons learned from that Texas storm because we had a lot of people communicating with us. And it was beautiful the way that all of a sudden they're like, okay, this can happen. And it was very different from what we had expected. And we're going to do something so if and when it happens again, we're prepared because we don't want to suffer that way. And that's what it's all about, right? Is making sure that we do what we can do now, that we pack that parachute well, so that if and when we need it, it works well, it performs, and it does the job that we hope it will do.
Yeah.
It'll save our life.
Absolutely.
You said something that's really important, Jonathan. You said it's a process. And what I want to do is expand on to simply say it is preparedness, emergency readiness is not a destination. It is a process. It is ongoing. If you ever say, well, I got it all covered, I'm done, I don't have to worry, oh boy, have you set yourself up, is the bottom line. And maybe not, maybe nothing will happen. But I just want to help people understand it really is a process of learning, as you said, and of personal growth, and asking these questions all the time. What if, what would I do? And if you just keep doing that and you say, I don't know what to do, then make a choice. Either figure out what to do or don't do it. It's okay. Just don't whine about it when that happens.
Precisely. Let's pivot just a moment here and we've talked a little bit about this, but this law of the parachute applies to, products. It also applies to knowledge, and teach us about knowledge and information and experience and how they all interplay.
The definition, sometimes people say, look at all the knowledge that's in a library. Look at all the knowledge that's on the internet. Zero knowledge on an internet. Zero knowledge in a library. In fact, this class that we're doing, this little presentation, there's no knowledge that I can share with you. The only thing that each one of us can share is information. So you share information. Now, what you want is good, credible, true information. You want to back everything up to principles, because sometimes if the information is just shallow, in other words, if it's like, well, it's right in this one situation, it works perfectly, but it has nothing to do with other things in there, then it's not complete. So you want true, correct, credible information. And then it turns into knowledge when I just say play with it, when you have fun with it, when you try it. And so that's what I'm doing all the time, is I'm experimenting and trying, and I've done some really weird things. Because I needed to know, I had a theory that some of the clothing, the way that I teach it, that would work at 30, 40, 50 below zero, where I can be dressed in the Arctic, which I've done, outside, not active, no fire, no shelter, at 30, 40 below zero. I said, you know what? If that will protect me from the cold, if I make a few switches to what I'm doing, it will also protect me from the extreme heat. And so I have a picture of me out on the desert when it was 105, and I'm dressed in what looks like my Arctic clothing, although it has a few little tweaks to it. And I'm out there and I have thermocouples on my body, and my partner had thermocouples on his body, and he was dressed in regular clothing, and his skin temperatures were higher than my skin temperatures. And then we actually went into our little heat chamber, which was called it was an old Suburban with the windows all rolled up, parked in the sun when it was 105. It was 115 inside. That was an oven in there. And then I was much more comfortable, and I was not under the physical heat stress that he was. He was in a bathing suit. He would have died in that heat can, and I would have survived longer. So I had a theory that it would work. I had to go prove it. I can now talk about that because I know that it works. I measured, I'll say scientifically, that it worked with instrumentation, so that I can simply say, yeah, some of these principles work in both the extreme heat and the extreme cold. So what you do is you play with this all the time. Now you have knowledge. And what happens is, one of the things I talked in the very beginning was about your attitude, packing that parachute in your head and your heart. Because if you lose that, you lose your life within seconds. You can simply on the way to death. And how you change your attitude about things is that when you are gaining knowledge about how and why things work, what your attitudes start to become about, I can take care of myself in this situation. So part of it is about gaining knowledge, which you get by experience. It's also about another thing in there about knowing who you are, why you are, and everything. I define that as what's your spiritual foundation. How do you think and feel about things? And different people will define that different ways, but there's more to you than meets the eye. When you have a solid spiritual foundation and you start understanding how and why things work and the kinds of things that could occur, and you're taking care of them, what's your attitude? Well, I can deal with this. That's why classes, books that you're going to read, and videos that you're going to watch, and classes that you go to, they will be helpful, but you do not have any knowledge until you've actually played with it. I see a lot of things. I have things on YouTube, and I just put one up this morning. And I watch a lot of things because I get a lot of good ideas there. There's like, I hadn't thought about that, or there's a nice way of describing that. But I always ask the question, is that all there is? What if that's not complete? What if there's more to it than that? So what if is always my question. And what I notice on a lot of these things, some of them they work in one situation very well, and they'll do what they will do. But if you're thinking about long-term and extremes, they won't take care of you. And there's a lot of those. And I try to be kind to people because they're doing the best they can do. But sometimes it's like they haven't asked the question, is this really going to work for the next, 6 months? Is it going to take care of me and my household? So those are some of the things you need to do. Go watch everything that you can, but don't say, oh, that is the answer. You ask the question, what if there's more to it than that? What if it won't work in other situations? And that just takes you deeper and deeper and deeper into products and into understanding how and why things work.
So you've provided us with some wonderful information today. Now the job is to take this information and play with it, experiment with it, think about it, learn from it, then we get knowledge.
Right.
And that's what we challenge our audience to do. Jim, tell us how our audience can get a hold of you. Tell us about your work and where they can reach out to you and some of the options that you provide.
Okay. Well, my mission, my personal mission, and it's really for my own household, but my personal mission is to reach and teach as many people as I can with principle-based training that will help them face the future with hope and confidence. That's what it is. When you have an understanding of how and why works, and you know what you're going to do, then you can face the future. And whatever the future is, you say it's going to be this, this, or this. Well, I'm just going to take the big umbrella thing that says loss of power grid wherever you are, and it's just gone. Can you face that future? Well, I'm not ready to do it right now, but I'm working on it. Well, let's work on it and get to the point where that doesn't worry you anymore. So that's what I do. And, I have my website is Jimsway, JIMSWAY.com, Jimsway.com. There are dozens of free classes on there that people can take. And I have links to other people have done programs on me, and I have links on there where they can go. So you can go there, take my classes. I also have, and there's a newsletter that I send out because I do classes every Wednesday night and every Saturday morning. I'm online, a Zoom class that people can attend. So you can get the newsletter, the Provident Living Times, and get the link and go to those classes. This is what I do. I just teach. And also on my website, there's a link to my YouTube channel. And I just put up one on there. I need to do more on YouTube because I'm so busy. I haven't done one. I'm a one-man shop right now, so it's kind of busy. But I just put up one that I hope people will watch. And it is the worst event you face. That's the title of it. So just go watch it. It's a short one. It's a 22-minute presentation followed by another 20 minutes of Q&A because I film them as a live event, and then I just edit out some things and clean it up, and I'll post them. And there's some YouTubes on there that are 2 hours long, and there's some on there that are shorter than that. But I'm trying to get as much information as I can just to get people to think. I don't have all the answers, but at least if I can get you to think, you can find the answers that'll work for you, and I'll provide some of them. And I love doing it live and in person and recorded and what have you. I'm happy to do that.
Okay. And then you have a subscription service as well that I find extremely valuable. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. One of the things on my website, you'll see a thing that's called members only. And there's about members, and it'll just tell you what it is. It's where you can just join that. It's a small subscription. It's $5.99 a month. That helps to pay for all the things that I do and the software that I rent and different things like that, so I can reach and teach as many people as I can. I wanted the price to be low, so $5.99, and that gives you classes you will not find anyplace else on planet Earth, and some things that are pulled together that you won't find anyplace else. The one on cold weather and winter, which is Winter Without Worries, it's 20 hours long. It has a 180-page class manual that you can download and take that class. That will give you more depth of understanding about winter, cold weather, all in one place. It's not that there's any secrets there. It's just that all in one place it doesn't exist, and I do some things that nobody else does. There's also a sanitation class, the Hidden Deadly Disaster, which is 4 hours. And there's a water class that's a long one too. And I have some others in there about building community and some of the things that I teach. So that's my income source right there, is that little $5.99 a month. Every now and then somebody says, well, I don't do cards. Well, send me an email and we can take a check. I'll plug you in there for a year at a time. Hey, somebody wants to sign up for 10 years. I'll do that too. Anyway, and I appreciate the people that subscribe, and also appreciate the people that just come for the free stuff, because that's my mission, to reach and teach. And they ask questions and it makes me think about, ooh, never considered that. I don't have an answer. I'm going to have to go find out. So that's what I do. I appreciate people that come and ask me.
Thank you, Jim, for all your information, for your wealth of experience and your wisdom. And now Mama has a question of the day.
Okay, so one of the quotes that I got today from Jim is, don't let fear steal your freedom. Don't let fear steal your freedom. So for the question of the day today, what are you doing so that fear doesn't steal your freedom and you can have peace? Comment below. And thanks for being part of the solution.